Studio Nathan brings to you Rough Draft Readings. This is a rough draft my wife has written and she is reading for you guys, so please enjoy.
Chapter 1 The Airport. We stood in the airport. Tricia thumbed through a romance novel, debating in her mind whether to read or to find something else to play with while on the 28-hour flight. Her hair was long, blonde, and pulled back in a ponytail. She wore a white shirt that did little to cover her pink bra underneath, and tight skinny jeans. Justin was playing a game on his portable PlayStation, and that would keep him entertained for 48 hours, let alone the flight. His shaggy brown hair curled up as it touched the rim of his glasses. He wore a shirt that had some video game character printed on the front, baggy pants, and had a Bluetooth in his ear. He was talking to headquarters about how our flight was delayed. Danny sat next to me, spread out in one of the airport chairs, twiddling his thumbs and talking to me about his hometown. He was dark-skinned and had a military haircut. Danny went on prattling about his family and his friends back home, like we had just met at the airport. I only half listened to what he had to say. I had heard him talk about his parents and siblings and friends so many times that I could repeat what he said word for word. I couldn't tell you how many times we had sat in an airport just like this and had to keep our covers, but today in the airport was different. We were not headed home. Rather, we were headed out on our first top secret mission. My mind was on the mission. We were told very little about what we were going to do. In fact, we were not even told who our target was. But we did know that I was hired on as a nanny, and Tricia was a maid. My fake name was Olivia, and I had grown up in London, England. Tricia was from Germany. Her fake name was Alicia. We were headed to Russia to plant a bomb in a target's house. When he returned home from his trip, or at least we assumed that, we would detonate the bomb and kill the target. The mission shouldn't be a problem, but it would be the first time that any of us would have to be a part of killing someone. A part of me wished that there was another way to solve the problem, but the general had assured me that there was no other way. I thought of the plan we had been studying over for the past 3 weeks. The plan seemed flawless, and we would carry the plan out flawlessly. I heard my phone ring before I felt a buzz against my thigh. I felt my stomach plummet like a weight. I slid the slim touch phone out of my pocket and glanced at the picture and the name that flashed up at me. A boy, maybe 16, with his black hair sticking up every which way. He had his arm around a girl with long brown-red hair. The girl was wearing jeans and a baggy t-shirt that matched the boy's. The name on the screen read Alexander the Great. I suppressed my sigh and touched the ignore button. I would talk to Alex when I was ready. Plus, I couldn't talk right now. That would blow my cover. I slid my phone back in my pocket and glanced over to the large bay window that looked out into the landing strip. A part of me wondered why we didn't just fly privately to our destination. It was a stupid question. I knew why. Because flying privately would be a dead giveaway to our covers most of the time. I glanced over at where Tricia sat a few rows back from me. She seemed to have made a decision to keep the romance novel and had started to read the book. She was curled up on her seat, biting her lip, eyes scanning the pages. Justin still played on his handheld video game, his tongue between his teeth in solid concentration. I got out of my chair, and Danny straightened up, ready to get out as well. Don't bother. The plane isn't here. I'm just heading to the restroom. Relax. I'll be back in 5. I walked away, and Danny slumped back into his seat. Tricia and Justin didn't even look up to see where I had gone. I walked across the white tile floor to the door that clearly read, Women. I pushed the door open with my shoulder, and was shocked to see that the women's bathroom was empty. I let the door close behind me, and I looked at the handle. I could bolt the door so that I could let my guard down for a few minutes. I looked around for cameras, but there wasn't any. just 5 stalls, and a dark counter with 3 sinks. I decided to lock the door. I walked to the counter and sat. My legs dangled over the side. I stared at one of the stall doors. There was a sign on it that read "out of order." Alex calling to my phone had rattled my nerves for some reason, and I needed to calm down so that I could keep my cover intact. I let my legs swing in a rhythm, and I closed my eyes. I could feel the coldness of the countertop seep through my clothes. I took 2 deep breaths and tried to picture the scene that seemed to always calm me down. I pictured myself sitting on top of a large boulder, its top flat, and watching the waterfall roll down the rocky face of a cliff. The waterfall isn't big, but small, coming from a mountain spring. The waterfall is tucked into a little cove. The rocks around me are rough. The ground is littered with little stones, and one log that had been there ever since I could remember. Part of the log was drenched in the water, and the other part dry and smooth from foot traffic, and many hands touching the wood for support. The water isn't very deep, maybe going to my hip when standing under the waterfall. I breathed in deeply, expecting to smell the cleaner of the airport bathroom. That would bring me back to reality. I didn't smell that, but the scent of pine and frozen earth. My skin prickled at the cold air that surrounded me. I opened my eyes. The scene that I had pictured was now in front of me. There was only one difference. There was snow and ice that covered the ground. The waterfall was frozen to the rock, which gave the rocks a glittering look. There was ice on the edge of the water, but hadn't quite made its way across. There was a good foot of snow everywhere, which included under me. I jumped up from the boulder, leaving my butt print in the snow. The wet snow seeped through my tennis shoes. Turning around, I couldn't believe what was in front of me. I was just at the New York airport. How did I get to the Grotto in my hometown? I must be dreaming. That had to be the answer. But I wouldn't have fallen asleep, not in uncomfortable chairs at the airport, and I was in the bathroom with the locked door. At least, that was what I can remember. So how on earth did I get here? I could feel my heart race in my chest, and goosebumps slowly rise against my skin. I was not dressed for winter weather. Short sleeves were not the smartest choice, but I hadn't planned on being outside. I took a few deep breaths, trying to calm my heart down and think rationally. I looked at the frozen waterfall and back to the boulder. I took a step back. I wasn't alone. A woman stood behind the boulder, barely entering into the cove. She was dressed in all black, and her red hair was pulled back into a bun. She stared at me, her head cocked to the side. Her green eyes looked over me like she hadn't eaten for days. And I was the first course in a 3-course meal. We had a silent stare-off. We were measuring each other up. She stood relaxed, but her hand was tucked in her pocket. She had a smug look on her face. I concluded that she didn't think me as much of a threat. That would be her first mistake. He finds you a threat? A little girl? You're what, 13? Please, I can take care of you myself in moments. Her voice was soothing, and I knew that her remark on my age was just to rally me up. I was 15, almost 16, and I looked like I was younger. And for some reason, people thought that was a sore spot for me. It wasn't. I was always treated like a little kid. That I didn't deserve what every other kid got at my age. I wasn't considered old enough, smart enough, or mature enough to handle situations. But I knew that a fight was going to start. I mustn't let my anger get the best of me. I couldn't let her know that she hadn't upset me. I had to make her think that she had every advantage. I'm 15, not 13, I snarled. I wanted the lady to think she actually had made me mad. I watched as she smiled. Her teeth were the perfect white that you only see in movie stars. It was like I had blinked. because in no time she stood an inch away from me. Something that would have made anyone stumble back in shock, making them vulnerable to attack, didn't even faze me. My actions were flawless, and in seconds I held the lady's arm behind her back and her face inches from the icy water. In one twist I could break her arm. The lady whimpered in pain as I tightened my grip. I noticed the mark on the back of the lady's neck, a skull and crossbones. Scrawled underneath were the words that I could not read. "How did you—" "Let me go! Arthur, help me!" the woman yelled, and tried to move out of my grip. I watched, as if in slow motion, someone put their hands over mine and pull me away from the woman. They slammed the woman's head against the ground hard enough that it would knock her out. Then the person just disappeared before I could really register what was going on. I felt pressure on my shoulder, everything seemed to blur, and then became clear again. I was seated, on the counter, in the airport, in the bathroom, behind a locked door, looking at a stall right in front of me with a sign that said "out of order." My hands gripped the edge of the counter as I launched myself to the floor. I turned around to stare into the mirror. What had just happened? I checked the clock on my phone. Only 1 minute had passed since I had locked the bathroom door. But that couldn't be possible. I had to have been gone for at least 15 minutes. I considered the mirror. My reddish-brown hair was still curled in perfect ringlets. My makeup, though light as it was still flawless. My green eyes stared back at me. There was a slight dark circle under them, probably from the lack of sleep. There was still a little redness to my nose and cheeks from the cold. I turned on the cold water and splashed it onto my face. There was no evidence that I had been out of the airport, but the scene still played in my mind. I would have to figure out what had happened later. I had a mission to complete, and that deserved all my attention. I dried off my face, fixed up my makeup, and walked out of the restroom acting like nothing had happened.